Well, hi everyone. Very nice to be here, and I think I speak for everyone when I say it is so nice after almost 2 full years to actually be able to see people in person. This is only the second time I've actually spoken to real people. Usually I'm sitting in my bedroom talking to a laptop screen, which is really weird, but it is very nice to see everyone. So thank you guys so much for coming. Today is going to be kind of like a testament to what Rotary has done for me. I'm pretty young, but I feel like almost in every aspect of my life, Rotary has been involved somehow. And so I kind of want to show you guys how I got from point A to point B, which is where I'm at today. So this is going to be about how Rotary has indeed changed my life. So first I just want to talk about my earlier experiences with Rotary. Back in high school, I think was the first time I had ever even heard of the Rotary Club. I was a sophomore in high school, I believe, and I'd never heard of it before. So my English teacher told us about a 4-way speech contest that our local Rotary Club was doing. And I hated public speaking, but the grand prize was $100. So for a sophomore in high school, you're like, wow, I could do so much with $100. So I decided to enter. I actually won. I gave a speech about how the 4-way test, how I had exhibited it in my life. And so that was my first exposure, and that was back in 2015. So I was 16 years old. And then later that year, because I had come in first place, my local club, because I'm from Salem, decided to send me to the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, which is RYLA. And so that was another experience I had with Rotary a couple months later. And this, I would definitely say, has been a very pivotal point in my life, was that right there when I was able to meet other young people from around the world and learn how to use Rotary to kind of help us become better leaders in our community. One thing that was amazing about RYLA was that I met students from all around the world, which growing up in Salem, Indiana, you don't have as much exposure to people outside of Salem, Indiana. So to meet people from Indonesia and Brazil, for me, it was just crazy because I was like, honestly, like I'd never thought I would meet people from other countries. And they told me about something called Rotary Youth Exchange, which I didn't really know what that was. And then I learned it was a year-long youth exchange where you go to another country and you live with a family for a year. And I was beyond excited. I was like, yes, that sounds like something I want to do. I want to apply for it. I hope I get it. And then in 2016, I was finally selected and I was sent to Mexico to study for a year. And so this is a picture right here of me, a really good friend of mine who is from Germany, and then the two people on the right are my host family. And I got very close to them while I was there. I'm actually really excited because my sister's getting married next week and they're coming from Mexico to the wedding, and I haven't seen them since I was 16 years old, so it's going to be a crazy experience. We're really nervous, but we're really excited. We picked them up from Louisville on August 25th, so I'm incredibly excited. These people took me in like I was their son, and they taught me so much, and they really took care of me, and I genuinely see them as my family. So those were kind of the earlier experiences with Rotary I had. While I was in Mexico, I definitely learned a lot about myself and about the world just in general. Because I would say that in Salem, Indiana, you have lower income communities, but it was nothing like the poverty that I had seen in a lot of communities in Mexico. And that's not to say that Mexico is an impoverished country. I mean, they do have high poverty rates, but it is a beautiful country. It's just sad that the lack of access that people have to education and sanitation and hygiene and all these important things that we have in the United States that we often take for granted. So I was in Celaya, Guanajuato, Mexico, which is a very small city in the south. And it was at this time that I became fluent in Spanish. I had taken classes in high school. I got like a C average, so I wasn't like a great student. So it really wasn't until I started speaking it every day that I finally became fluent. And like I said, I developed a really deep appreciation for Mexican culture. The food was incredible. If you've ever tried authentic Mexican food, it's amazing. The people are so kind and welcoming. I mean, you could meet a complete stranger and they'll welcome you as if you were their child. It's incredible. And it was something that I hadn't really experienced in the United States. And again, going back to what I witnessed in terms of the poverty, I became really interested in governmental corruption because that's a big issue in Mexico, why they can't fund a lot of these public programs that the people need. And I also became really interested in humanitarian issues, like why are people suffering because of this, how are they suffering, and what can we as a global community do to help them? So that's where my interest in humanitarian issues really began. So coming back from Mexico in 2017, I began my undergrad. So I went to the University of Southern Indiana, which is located in Evansville. A lot of you probably know it. And I decided to major in political science and Spanish because I already had such a big background in the Spanish language. So these are just a list of some of my classes. I won't go through all of them. Mostly political classes like Middle Eastern politics, Russia and Chinese politics, and then also classes on Hispanic cultures. So I tried to make my studies as broad as possible to get a little information about everything that I was interested in, whether it was politics or culture or language. And I really credit USI to helping establish the foundation of my knowledge. A lot of people, I think USI kind of has a bad rep. It's a cheaper public school, so a lot of people say, oh, the quality of education you get isn't as good. But I genuinely believe that you give what you get. And I took advantage of my professors and my classes, and I feel so honored to have gotten such a great education from USI. I'm very proud of my school. The thing is, though, with USI is that the political science department and international studies is very small because people in this part of the country aren't as interested in that kind of stuff. So, we had a few professors and we had about a class of 20 to 30, so it wasn't a huge program, but I still learned a lot. And USI also has a huge international student population. So at this time, I was continuing to be exposed to students from Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and still giving me a lot of new perspectives and ideas about the world that I hadn't had before. So while I was at USI, I was really heavily involved in the Thirst Project, which is an organization that works to provide access to clean drinking water in all parts of the world. They mostly work in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. So that organization, actually I started that on our campus with my friend. So we worked under the national organization at our local community. And I was also heavily involved in the International Club, which was the club that focused on bringing foreign cultures together with American cultures and kind of helping to build bridges between the two different groups. So in 2021, back in May, I graduated with my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Spanish Studies. So that's me and my younger sister, by the way. So that was graduation. I was very thankful that I got to have an actual ceremony. It was socially distanced and we were all wearing masks, but I was just happy to have anything, really. So my last year of college was, again, very pivotal for me because I did an internship with the United States Embassy in Madrid. This was a very hard program to get into. I still can't believe that I actually got into it and I was actually able to go. So this was through the U.S. Department of State Student Internship Program. Like I said, I was in Madrid at the consular section. So I worked with two different parts of the embassy. The section that handles the visa, which is the visa unit, and then the American Citizen Services, which handles pretty much any emergency situation abroad that Americans would face while they were traveling. So a lot of what we dealt with were people who had passports lost or stolen. We dealt with people who got married while abroad, because that happens pretty often. We dealt with people who had children while abroad and had to register their child as a legal American citizen. And then there was a lot of more tragic cases where people had passed away while they were traveling, and we had to handle the documentation and being in contact with the different agencies back in the United States. It was amazing to see, I never thought the bureaucracy would be amazing, but I was pretty amazed at how they operated on the ground floor with actual American citizens. It was so cool to be that middleman between, a lot of times there was students who were so in these horrible situations, they couldn't get back home, and a lot of times we were the ones who would have to contact their family and their school and organize how they would get back home, whether they ran out of money or they lost their passport or whatever. So it was an amazing experience, and it was amazing to see how they reacted to COVID-19, to see the government reacting to such a huge pandemic and such a huge international conflict was so cool to see what they were doing, how they were working with citizens to manage everything. So there were two events. I just talked about the COVID-19 outbreak in Madrid. That one was really bad because Madrid was a hot spot. So we were communicating with a lot of American citizens who were infected and who didn't have a way of getting home. And then also there was another instance where sexual assault was on the rise in Spain, especially against young American college girls who were going to parties or clubs. And so at this point, the embassy had to decide, is this something that we want to alert American citizens of? Because at the end of the day, it's the embassy's job to protect American citizens while abroad and to make sure they have access to all the resources they need. So the embassy decided to release what they call it's part of the STEP program, so it's for safety while you're traveling. So they sent out an email to all Americans to let them know that sexual assault cases were on the rise. They got a lot of backlash from the Spanish government, from the people there. They were so upset. They were like, are you calling us, criminals and things like that. So I remember walking to work today and having to weave in between press buses and reporters who were taking videos and doing interviews. It was crazy. It died down after about 2 weeks, but it was still, interesting to be a part of that and just see everything that was going on. And so that really, I mean, everything I talked about has really sparked my interest in global affairs, like what's going on in the world, what is the United States doing with our allies? Because if you look at this NGO that I listed, for example, Freedom House, one thing that we're noticing is that democracies around the world are actually declining. Which, I mean, all you have to do today is open the newspaper or look at your news app on your phone, and it's very clear that democracies aren't doing that great. And so it kind of begs this question, like, what role does the United States play in that? Are we supposed to be a leader and lead this global push for human rights and democracy like we have at home? Should we be a global police force? Should we get involved in countries where human rights aren't being respected, where there is no democracy? Or do we just distance ourselves altogether and just not be a part of it and just stay isolated here at home? I don't have the answers. I don't think anyone has the answers. I didn't expect to solve world problems in this presentation, but you know, as with most issues of politics, there isn't really a black and white. It's all gray. And so no matter what you think, you know, it's still important to study this stuff and to understand what's happening, because we do need to be aware. And I think in the United States, as amazing as we are, we do struggle with understanding what's happening in the world. From what I've seen, younger people my age, you know, we don't understand conflicts, we don't understand geography of other continents, and so we really need to be aware of what's going on, and we really can't remain ignorant. So that's why I have decided to pursue a master's degree at the University of Salamanca. So this is the image you see. This is actually one of the oldest universities in Spain. I think they just celebrated their 800th birthday recently. Yeah, it's crazy. This was the same university, by the way, that Christopher Columbus met with the King and Queen of Spain before traveling to the New World. So they have a lot of history there. It's definitely one of the gems of Spain. It's a very famous university. So I was accepted into the Masters in Global and International Studies program. It's a 2-year program. My studies are going to focus on nationalism and conflict management. So talking about issues like human rights, ethnic conflicts, religious conflicts around the world. And yeah, also focusing on the threats that I was talking about to democracy around the world and like interstate conflict. Like these are just some examples that exist in the world today, like Syria, Ukraine, Russia, China, Tibet, Israel, Palestine. And if I had made this PowerPoint a week ago, I'd put Afghanistan on there too. So it's like just seeing everything unraveling around the world and understanding what we as people who study that have to do to, you know, provide counsel to politicians or to public policy experts to be a part of the solution. So a lot of the courses in this program are taught by former ambassadors. There's, I think, 2 former US ambassadors. There's foreign ministers from European countries. And these people have a lot of experience in managing international projects, whether that be to fund public roads or to build up education in local communities, you know, whatever it is, they have experience doing it. So I am like extremely excited. I leave next week on August 30th, like Dick said. And I'm just amazed that I even have this opportunity. I'm very grateful to learn from people like that. And then at the end of the program, I will participate in something called the Global Internship Program. So the university essentially sets us up with an internship, whether it's with the European Union or NATO or the United Nations, you know, whatever organization we want to learn from. And they help us get job experience, and they help us see how our studies actually apply to the real world. So I'm also extremely excited for that. And so now to talk about the scholarship that I received back in, I think it was this January. I don't remember. I think it was in January. It was towards the end of December, around January. So to give you a little information about this scholarship, so this is called the Rotary Global Grant Scholarship. It's awarded to one student in the district who's pursuing graduate studies abroad in a different country. And the studies have to fall into one of these categories. So you have like promoting peace, fighting disease, supporting mothers and children, growing local economies, and obviously I would say that my area of studies falls under the category of promoting peace. So I went through an interview process. I spoke with a lot of different Rotarians. Jim Bright, who is kind of like my liaison for the scholarship, he gets in contact with a lot of the different clubs when I come speak like I am now. So yeah, it was kind of a strenuous process, but I was very honored to be chosen because, like I said, I feel like Rotary has been with my life almost every step of the way. So I feel like this is a way for me to give back, because while I'm in Spain, I'll essentially be serving as kind of like an ambassador from this district to District 2201, which is in Salamanca. So I'll be attending their Rotary events. I'll be telling them how Rotaries run here, what kind of projects we do, and I'll kind of be the communication back and forth between the 2 districts, which I'm really excited for. And yeah, so that is part of the expectations for the scholarship. So yeah, for the next 2 years, like Dick said, I've been awarded $40,000, and that money can be applied to any essential expenses, whether that's tuition, housing, textbooks, travel to and from the country. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be acting as a representative from this district to my district in Spain. So I'm incredibly excited. I really can't wait to get started and work on some of the projects with them. And then this begs the question, what's next? And that is a good question because I have absolutely no idea. I'm really interested in seeking employment with any organization that works to promote global peace and democracy, because at the end of the day, that is something that I'm passionate about and that's something that I want to work with. So obviously I did an internship with the US Department of State, so this idea of working as a foreign service officer for the Department of State is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I would say that that's probably my plan A at this point. And there are a few different ways that I can go about doing that. So one is the Presidential Management Fellowship. So after I graduate from my master's degree, I'm able to apply for this fellowship, which essentially sets me up for working any job in the federal government. Or another option would be to take the Foreign Service exam, which is essentially just an exam to test your understanding of history, politics, business, economics, just essentially anything, and to test your judgment as a Foreign Service officer to see if you can actually serve in this position. But you know, I'm not going to tie myself down and say I have to work with this specific organization. I would honestly really be open to working with any global or regional security organizations like NATO or even the United Nations. So I hope that these next 2 years will be very enlightening for me, and I'll be exposed to a lot of different things that I can do with my life and different things that I can apply my studies to. So that essentially concludes my presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with Rotary in Mexico, the host club?
Yeah, sure. So it was definitely interesting, to say the least. It was different than at home. We did work on a lot of local projects. So we worked with homeless populations within Mexico. We helped provide things like blankets and pillows and things like that. But honestly, I wasn't as active with them as I wish I would have been. They didn't do a lot of projects, essentially. So I wish I would have been had more of a leadership role to kind of say, we should do this or we should do this. Because looking back at that year I spent in Mexico, I think I was more interested in exploring the country than I was working with Rotary, which I kind of regret going back. I wish I would have done things differently. So yeah, other than the few projects that I worked on with them, I didn't have as much of an experience with the local Rotary Club there. But it was interesting, surprisingly, I was looking at the statistics, so Rotary clubs in Europe are predominantly men, and Rotary clubs in Latin America are predominantly women. So pretty much the entire club I was working with were older women. And we did fun stuff, we had parties, we hung out, but when it comes to like actual community service, there wasn't a whole lot that we were doing. So I wish I would have been more a part of that, but yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Back to the visa unit when you were at the Embassy in Madrid.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how that works, and probably not complicated, but I was always wondering so that would be specifically for residents of Spain that wanted to come to the U.S.
Yeah.
Is all of the application, approval, the process done at the Embassy in Spain, or is some of it done in the U.S. and processing part of it or all of it in the U.S.? How does that work?
That's a really good question. Yeah,
There's a petition that is decided in the United States, but the petition's filed abroad, and then it comes, so it has to go to the States and come back once there's an approval, and then there's all the stuff that happens overseas, like you have to have a medical clearance and all these other things, security clearance type stuff. That happens back at the embassy or the consular section. Sometimes it's just a consulate.
Yeah, right.
So a little bit of both.
Yeah, so a lot of decisions get made in Washington and overseas.
It was the same way. So my internship was 3 months long. I was supposed to spend a month and a half in the American Citizen Services, which handled the passports and worked with American citizens. And then I was supposed to do the second half in the visa unit. Because of COVID, I had to go home early, so I wasn't able to be in the visa unit that long. But that's how ACS was. A lot of what we were doing was sent back to Washington, and there was communication between both of the agencies when it came to, getting approved for a passport or an emergency passport or something like that. So yeah. Yeah.
I could be like you, talk about youth exchange or Rotary all day, but I want to talk about two things. Sergio Daga from Bolivia came to Mitchell High School, graduated from Mitchell, and he went back home to Bolivia. This is about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And finished high school, finished his master's degree. But the part about Spain, he went to Spain and earned a doctorate degree and did an international studies program in Spain.
Wow.
And like his second daughter I know was born in Spain while he was there. But it's sort of like you, only in reverse.
Yeah.
And Mitchell and Salem are two similar towns. You know, beef, cow, cattle, small towns.
Right.
And so that's the similarity between Sergio. I know I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly.
Yeah.
Sergio,
yeah. Well, you know, however. People call me, my name is Cameron, but in Mexico I was called Camarón, which is how you say with a Spanish accent, which is oddly enough the word for shrimp. So people called me shrimp when I was in Mexico. But it's fine. So, you know, it's normal. But yeah, it's amazing because Rotary does have a lot of, like, I hear a lot of stories who are very similar to my own. And I've met a lot of young people whose lives have literally been changed by doing either Rotary Youth Exchange or RYLA or just these things that maybe you as Rotarians don't think much about, but for people like us, like, it really does have an impact on our lives. So, and that's why I'm really grateful to be speaking to you guys about this, because when it comes to things like the Rotary Foundation and the money that they collect from Rotarians, it's like maybe I feel like a lot of times you don't get to see, you know, what that money actually goes towards. But I can attest that that money is going to be used to change my life essentially, and to give me this path that I probably wouldn't have had it not been for Rotary. So that's one reason why I wanted to speak to you guys today about that.
And that's a very good point, because the Global Grant Scholarship program just started like 5 years ago. And it's really important to our district and also to Rotary and also to the world. I mean, I think we as a club need to really understand that.
Oh yeah. And it's not even, you know, not all Rotary districts participate in the Global Grant Scholarship, and I know friends from other districts who are so jealous. They're like, I can't believe that your district does something so cool like that. And I'm like, yeah, I can't believe it either, but I feel so lucky. I mean, you know, it's incredible, and I'm really honored. I think honored and grateful are just two of the feelings that I feel when I think about how much I've gotten from Rotary. So.
And there was a district
cover everything for you?
Yeah, so I was working out the budgeting of it. Luckily, Spain is a beautiful country. The cost of living is a little bit lower than the United States. So I think for the apartment that I've gotten, I pay about $350 a month, which is pretty good compared to some of the apartments I've seen in Evansville, you know? So yeah, I can, and also I recently got a job working as an English teacher in Spain. So I'll have that extra, you know, income just in case for whatever reason I need, you know? Yeah. So, yeah.
So how did you secure an apartment in Spain being here?
It was not easy, let me tell you. They have a website. It's very similar to, I guess, what do we use here to find apartments? Like apartments.com or something like that, Airbnb. Essentially, luckily, Salamanca is a city that has like 80% of the population is students. So as a city, they're very used to students coming from other countries, and they were very easy to work with. Now, when I went to Madrid, that was a very different story, because they thought it was weird that someone wanted to buy an apartment from another country who doesn't even want to come see the apartment. And Madrid as a city is so expensive, so I ended up paying like $1,000 a month for like a Harry Potter closet under the stairs. That was like, you know, a little bed. It was a mess, but I was able to get in contact with my landlord. I explained the situation. He's like, yeah, I've rented to foreign students before, no problem. Just sign this contract, and when you get here, you can pay the deposit and start paying your monthly rent. So he was very easy to work with, thankfully. And we've been in contact through email a lot. Yeah, I've heard some scary stories though of people, especially because scamming is such a common thing there. So people think they have an apartment, they get there, and the address doesn't exist, and the apartment isn't there, and they have to get that sorted out. So I feel very grateful that my apartment is in fact real, and I do have a place to sleep at night when I get there. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah.
So will you come back at all, or will you be there for 2 years?
That's a good question. In terms of the summer, I'm not sure. I'm for sure coming back for Christmas, because I would love to see my family. It'd be very hard to be away from them that long, especially at Christmas. The scholarship doesn't cover optional travel to come back home, so any expenses that I accrue just to come home for Christmas will be out of my own funds, which I'm fine with. So that's probably in terms of coming home for the summer. If this job I currently have runs over the summer, I might stay there over the summer and then try to plan like a couple weeks to come back home. But if not, then I might just come back home for the whole summer, maybe find a job here to make a little more money and go back.
One last question and I'll shut up. So, how many bags will you take and how do you pack?
You know, I have to say the good thing about Europe is they know how to live with a little bit. Like I've seen a lot of my friends are European and they travel with the tiniest bag and they just make it work. And I went actually 2 months ago to visit a friend in the Netherlands and I tried it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to just live out of this tiny bag for like 3 weeks. And it was actually a lot easier than you would think. So I'm just planning on taking one bag of
And a lot of deodorant.
A lot of deodorant. Get the essentials, get the socks, the underwear, you know. But yeah, and when I went to Mexico, I know that a lot of what I needed had to be bought when I was in Mexico because it's just almost impossible to travel with every single thing you need, you know. So yeah, I'm just gonna pack a bag and hope for the best.
The apartment's furnished.
It is furnished, yes. It's a student apartment, thankfully. So I have a bed, I have a furnished kitchen, a bathroom, everything I need. I just have to buy like, I don't know, toilet paper or dish detergent or something like that, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Now you're Spanish from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and then in Spain or
Yeah.
Portugal, or it's in Spain?
Yeah, it's in Spain.
Okay. Are you going to adjust all right on that?
You know, Spaniards have a bad reputation for having the worst sounding Spanish in the world, and it is true. I can attest to that. Mexican Spanish is so clear, it's slow, they're very easy to talk to, and in Spain they talk 1,000,000 miles an hour. They have 15 different words for one thing. And so when I got there, they told me, they're like, you know, you sound Mexican. And I'm like, well, I learned my Spanish in Mexico, so that's probably why. And my friends would make fun of me because my Spanish was so different. But I think after being there for a month, I finally caught on to the words that they were saying. And one experience I had, which I'm not going to elaborate on too much, so there's a word in Mexico that is very explicit and is a very bad meaning, and in Spain it's just a normal word that they use every day. So I can't even explain to you the shock I heard when my landlord told me that to my face, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, did you mean to say that? He goes, oh no, here in Spain that's normal, we just say that. And I'm like, okay. And he was right. I heard it from my supervisors at work. I heard it from my friends. It's just a normal word. Like my host family's coming from Mexico, and I have to be careful not to say that word when I talk to them in Spanish because they'd be very surprised, I think, if they heard that come out of my mouth. But yeah, so the Spanish is definitely different, but I think I can get used to it. Luckily, my program is in English, so I don't need the Spanish in terms of like my academics. But when it comes to living, like communicating with my roommates or my landlord, it's mostly in Spanish. Yeah. Thank you, guys.